There was one hell of a football game last night. Now, they both were good, but the first one was great. And for the first time in the 50-year history of Monday Night Football, there were 2 lead changes in the final minute of the game. That had never happened before. And it happened last night as the New Orleans Saints somehow pulled out the victory. Let's get big picture reaction to that first game, starting with Chris Simms. Your thought about the Saints pulling that victory out of the fire against the Texans.
Well, phenomenal football game. Saints get off to a slow start, which is pretty status quo for them on a week 1 football in the NFL regular season like we've seen the last 2 years. But ultimately did look like the better, more complete team. The problem and why the game was so close, though, is the best player on the field, number 4, Deshaun Watson, was absolutely out of this world with some of the things he pulled off in the game, which led to absolute excitement. But I think as the game went on, we saw the Saints were the better team. But, man, the Texans are dangerous with number 4. And New Orleans has got to feel good or somewhat lucky that they got out of there with such a big win. And they got the ball back there late with Drew Brees being able to get them back into field goal position.
You know, I think, Mike, when I was watching that game, the one thing I said was Deshaun Watson, if he can play 16 games this year, is going to take his place in the Pantheon because I thought he was absolutely terrific and under fire. Sacked 6 times. Laramie Tunsil was not, at least in week 1, the real tonic that he needed. But the other thing I found myself thinking at the end of this game was how valuable a good kicker is. I mean, you look at the entire weekend and you see more and more the value of a good kicker. Kari Vedvik basically cost the New York Jets a game, you know, essentially. Adam Vinatieri, as sacrosanct as this sounds, cost the Indianapolis Colts a game. And so what happens in New Orleans, where we would have been talking about the scandal of all scandals again, you know, the blown call at the end of the first half, you know, where there should have been 31 seconds left on the clock for the Saints to be able to go in and get closer to at least attempt a makeable field goal. Will Lutz took their feet out of the fire with what he did late. And to me, I just think that was a fantastic game, as you said, Mike, but it just basically puts an exclamation point. If you've got a good kicker, he's one of the top 10 most important players on your team.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Peter. I mean, that was hardly a chip shot. It was a 58-yarder, and Will Lutz came out, and he banged it like it would have been good from 68. And there was never any doubt about it. And think of how many teams out there now would have been panicked at the thought of sending their kicker out. It used to be most teams felt good about their kickers. Now there is that growing handful of teams that really would have had very little faith in the ability of their kicker to nail a 58-yarder with that kind of confidence. But before we even got to that point, you know, once the Saints go up 27-21 and there's 50 seconds left, I mean, this is a long shot for the Texans to go 75 yards. And the way they did it, I've never seen it before. 2 plays, right? The 38-yard throw to DeAndre Hopkins.
Time on the clock.
And who would have ever dreamed that you'd leave too much time on the clock when you get the ball back with 50 seconds left, Peter?
Yeah. I mean, look, the one thing about this team, they're not only a deep strike capable team, but I said this at the time of the trade. Understand this, even though maybe Miami wanted to get rid of Kenny Stills, this was no throw-in who didn't mean anything. Look at what happens to this guy. He has 3 days of practice with Deshaun Watson, and Kenny Stills comes out and makes the play of the game at the end of the game. And really, you know, whether they should have won it, could have won it, whatever. Now you look at this team. They have 3 legitimate threats at receiver with that incredible catch last night by Will Fuller. I still think DeAndre Hopkins is the best wide receiver in all of football. And now imagine if your third guy is as reliable a player. He doesn't drop the ball, Kenny Stills. He has a great yards per catch average over his career, and he never gets hurt. The Houston Texans are going to be a load for people down the stretch this year.
Yeah, Chris, you had mentioned Deshaun Watson playing as well as he did, and the problem is he was in the medical tent twice. Is he going to make it?
Right?
And that's really the question.
I know, and that's what I worry about. I mean, Peter makes a lot of great points. There's no doubt about it. They're dangerous with some of the speed they have at wide receiver. Deshaun Watson is as good a deep ball thrower, throws a pretty deep ball as you're ever going to see. I mean, it's unreal some of the things he pulls off. But, man, I mean, the way he plays, and Mike, you heard me say this last week, every play is the last play of the game. It's just always, dancing around, scrambling, hanging in there to the very last second, getting just absolutely demolished as he's throwing the football. If he continues to have to play this style, there's no way he can play 16 games. There's just not. We've been around this guy, right, guys? I mean, he's not a real big guy. This is not Cam Newton or Ben Roethlisberger we're talking about. And that is like my number one fear for the Texans football team, where, yes, we have questions about their defense, as we saw last night, because New Orleans just picked them apart with 5- and 6-yard passes all night long, so that was slow death. But Deshaun Watson just so much on his plate, and I really do question whether he can physically hang in there.
Yeah, the health of Deshaun Watson is an issue, and with Drew Brees, and look, we were treading lightly earlier when Peter was talking about Adam Vinatieri costing the Colts the game, and we were talking about Hall of Fame players here, but Drew Brees, I want to go back to a throw that was very impressive, that made me think the game was over at that moment, that set up the field goal that put the Saints up 27-21 on 3rd and 2 from their own 15. But I have to say, it should have been 31-21.
Thank you.
Not 27-21.
Right.
Let's roll it for anybody who's watching on TV, and watch this closely. It's a great throw by Drew Brees, but you have to watch the ball come in and what Ginn does. Ginn slows down for this ball, folks. If he hits Ginn in stride, it's 31-21, and the Texans have no chance at that point. And I say this with all respect and admiration of Drew Brees,
yes,
but this is what happens when you're a 40-year-old quarterback, Chris.
This is what scares me about the Saints and Drew Brees, because other than this, every throw of the night is really just manipulated by Sean Payton, and I believe this was the deepest ball he threw. It was the only ball I think he threw over 20 yards the whole night long in the air. But that is the concern, and as teams continue to play the Saints and get used to what they're trying to do on offense, this will be the big thing when they play quality defenses in the NFL. Can they back them off? Can Drew Brees' arms scare them enough? Because we know Sean Payton's got a million ways to get Alvin Kamara the ball underneath, Michael Thomas the ball underneath. I mean, everything is great that way, but ultimately, we talk about this a lot. Turnovers are the number one thing that decide football games. The second thing, explosive plays. And I do wonder if their pass game can deliver that way as the season goes along and people start to accumulate more knowledge about this offense.
Well, I'll just make one point about that. And, Mike, you're absolutely right bringing up this throw. I noticed it at the time of the throw. But let's remember this one thing. And, Chris, you mentioned when they play a good defense. That will be a top 12 defense in the league by the end of this year.
Oh, I'm not sure about that one.
Defense, I think they will be. I think I'm worried a little bit about their secondary.
Yeah.
But assuming that J.J. Watt doesn't fall off a cliff, and he wasn't much of a factor last night, but if J.J. Watt is still there, Whitney Merciless has shown that Bernardrick McKinney, he was great last night.
He was.
They've got enough to be a top 12 defense in this league. The only point I'm making is this. Last night, Drew Brees, as shaky as you would think that he is, he still threw for 370 yards. The Saints gained 510 yards last night. I'm not too worried about them. I mean, and who knows? That arm could become a factor at some point this year. But let's talk about, in my opinion, what of all the games we saw last night, I mean, of all the four teams, the units on these four teams, I would be concerned with the New Orleans defense. They've got to play better than that. They've got to get more pressure on the quarterback than they got last night.
Well, but they sacked him 6 times. I mean, that's the thing. Is it because the Texans' offensive line is bad, or is the Saints defensive line better than maybe we expected them to be? I feel like this is more a Texans thing, though, and I feel like this is going to be the theme of the season, just like it was last year. You pick up Laramie Tunsil, that addresses 1 out of 5 spots. All it takes is one glaring weakness on your offensive line, Chris, and your quarterback's running for his life all day.
Yes, and it's still early too, just like what Peter's saying. I mean, their O-line still kind of getting together as far as cohesiveness and getting everybody on the same page. There is something to that. I mean, you got a franchise left tackle who's only been there for a week. He did. It looked like he messed up a few times last night. I think there's 2 other things at play here, just off to what Peter said. First off, I don't think that the Texans have enough easy completions for Deshaun Watson. Every play is stand in the pocket, wait for 6 seconds, dance around. I hope somebody's open 30 yards downfield. I mean, can we throw some screen passes, some more quick passes to get the ball out of his hand to save him that way? The other thing, as far as the Saints point, the Saints play way too much man-to-man. I mean, just even there, what you saw at the end of the football game. Why are we even playing press bump man-to-man with a great corner in Marshawn Lattimore against DeAndre Hopkins with 50 seconds left in the game? Why? I mean, is it just it's stone cold? Oh, we got Marshawn Lattimore over there. He's our best corner. He'll shut him down. Oh, yeah, well, I mean, as Peter said, DeAndre Hopkins in the conversation for the best wide receiver in football. That would be my other issue with the Saints. Over-aggressive in the coverage too much. Too many one-on-one shots, and we saw that's what they went down the field. Boom, boom, and it was man-to-man, and Deshaun put it right on the money.
That's a great point. You're defending the end zone from 75 yards away with 50 seconds left.
Well, why? Yes. I don't care if you have Deion Sanders. Let's help him out a little bit.
That's my point. You just drop into deep coverage. Give him a 20-yard completion. A field goal isn't going to matter.
Right.
Peter, it really is stunning that it even got to the point where the Texans scored surely the plan wasn't let them score quickly and we'll go down the field and kick a 58-yard field goal. But what are you doing if you're the Saints giving up that much territory that quickly, Peter?
I think you're right, Mike. I think especially when you have a guy as competitive and tough and excellent in man coverage as a guy like Marshawn Lattimore is, I think there was way too much cushion given by Dennis Allen and his defense at times in that game. And if you are getting the pressure that you're getting that they got at times, and I think it was an at times situation, then I would have really ratcheted up the coverage. It's like, the Jets. I watched the Jets game on Sunday, and Tremaine Johnson is playing like 18 yards off. What position is that? It's like he's a deep safety playing corner, because I think they have a fear that he's afraid of getting beat over the top. But the Saints should not have that same fear. That's a good secondary right there, and I think they got to be playing closer to the line of scrimmage.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.